All right, let's get right into it. We're going to unpack a recent report that's making some pretty big claims about fraud inside U.S. social programs. We're going to walk through exactly what the source material alleges, the numbers they're using, and the debates that are swirling around it. So let's just start with the question that the report uses to hook you right in, and it's a real head-scratcher. Can someone with $1 million actually legally get food stamps? You know, the answer, at least according to this source, might not be what you think.
And we're not just talking hypotheticals here. The report we're digging into kicks things off with a very real case. A millionaire up in Minnesota who apparently followed all the rules and legally qualified for SNAP benefits.
Now here's a really fascinating twist. The quote you're seeing here, it's supposedly from that very same millionaire. He basically frames the whole situation not as a success of the program, but as a sign that something in the system itself is broken.
Which, of course, leads to the billion-dollar question. How on earth can a system that's supposed to help people in need end up giving benefits to someone with that much wealth? Well, the report claims it's not a glitch, it's actually built into the rules.
And that brings us to the system itself. This is where the report gets into the real nitty-gritty of the regulations that allegedly make all this possible. It's a structure that one person in the source material actually calls fraud by design. So here's the key thing you have to understand, the difference between an income test and an asset test. See, an income test, it only looks at what you're earning right now. But an asset test, that looks at the whole picture, your savings, your house, your investments, your total net worth.
And this, right here, is the loophole that makes the whole millionaire story possible. The source says that a huge majority of states, we're talking over 40 of them, have gotten rid of that asset test. So what does that mean? It means if you have millions in assets, but very little or even zero current income, you could legally qualify in those states.
And that brings us back to this really provocative phrase used in the report. The argument they're presenting is that by deliberately taking the asset test off the table, the system is essentially designed to allow for outcomes that seem totally against the spirit of the program. Okay, so the report doesn't just stop with those broad eligibility rules. It then starts to drill down into claims of more organized, more targeted schemes. It points to what it calls specific pockets where this kind of activity is supposedly happening. And here are a few of the examples they cite. In Minnesota, the focus is on these supposed daycare centers that have no children, allegedly run by Somalian groups. Then you've got Los Angeles, where the claim is a full third of all hospices funded by Medicaid are located, with fraud being rampant. And then in Indiana, get this, an autism therapy company was allegedly paid $340,000 per patient. So, if these claims are even partially true, you have to wonder, what's the financial damage? Well, this next part of the report tries to put a number on it, and honestly, the scale they're talking about is pretty staggering. So let's just start with this number. One expert who's featured in the source material estimates there's about $100 billion in what he calls definable fraud, waste, and abuse. And that's just within Medicare and Medicaid alone. Now, to put that number in perspective, the report points to the $5.5 trillion that the U.S. spent during the pandemic. And the argument they make is that when you push that much money out that fast, you unfortunately create an environment that's just, well, it's ripe for exploitation. And to make this a little more concrete, the source offers this really specific data point. It claims that in 2024, $343 million in cold, hard cash left the Minneapolis airport. And they're projecting that to be $350 million for 2025. This is presented as just one snapshot of where some of these funds are allegedly ending up. So after laying out all these alleged problems, the report naturally pivots to the big debate. What should we do about it? How are policymakers supposed to respond to claims like these? This slide really gets to the heart of the matter. It captures this deep philosophical divide that the commentators describe. On one hand, the source says you have the view that high enrollment in these programs is a good thing. It's a sign of success, that we're helping people. But on the other hand, you have the view that it's a sign of a huge problem, especially in the wealthiest country in the world. So what does a real-world policy solution look like? Well, the report points to one recent effort, bringing in work requirements. The idea is pretty simple. If you're an able-bodied person without dependents, you need to work a certain number of hours every week to get your benefits. It's a direct attempt to address that no asset test issue for people who might have wealth but no job. And that all brings us to the final and maybe most important question that this whole report leaves you with. It's really the core tension in this entire debate, isn't it? How do you create a system that's easy enough for people who genuinely need help to get it fast, while also making it tough enough to stop people from taking advantage of it? Finding that balance? Well, that's the real challenge.